This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Thank you for hanging out with us today. As you know, I try to go around the planet finding the best people on it so they can come on here, grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. So today I found Nick Davies. He's a performance and mindset coach, a keynote speaker, a podcaster, a master pro advisor coach. And Nick takes the lessons from his extensive exposure to people and businesses, and he applies it to his life and his clients' lives. And he focuses it on getting to the heart of whatever people really want. And so, Nick, I'm glad you're here because I love what you're about. And I also want to talk to you about what is it actually that people really want, right? So before we get into all of that, thank you for being here on Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. And who is Nick? What a small question, right? Who's Nick?
Thank you so much, Neena. Love it. Love the intro. Love the energy as well. One of my biggest things that I think that is always available to us is to command the energy that we have to give the best. You know, it's like when we're influencing people, if that's in our business, if that's in other parts of life, like it's always a reminder to me that you haven't got to convince anyone of anything. All you got to do is show them that you're convinced, and like that, and that's like the game changer. So maybe that's who I am. Maybe that's what it's about for me. You know, like it's so interesting to think about as you ask that question, to reflect on which part of my life, you know, which part of my life should I focus and tell you about, or you know, what's the overall view of it, you know, and I guess like overall right now, like my passion and has been for a long time is to be passionate and help people that are already successful to get more successful. People that know that there's that much more available, but just aren't quite fulfilled, aren't quite get there. And that's what I do all day long. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm a husband and a father to two young girls, right? And that's my life.
Oh, and that's so fun, right? Two young girls. How old are they?
5 and 13 months.
Oh my God, that's so fun. I love that age. That 5-year-old age is fun.
Oh, it's
a lot of energy, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm really glad you're here. And, you know, I do want to dig into, you know, what people really do want, because I think that right now, especially, I'm seeing that a lot of people don't know what they want, or they're in this place of feeling, you know, stagnant, or, you know, especially I think after COVID, right? Because people are like rethinking about what they want to do. Like, do they want to go to an office for 16 hours a day? Like that kind of thing. So Nick, before we get into like you becoming a coach and all of that, I do want to know, you know, what was that point in your life where you pivoted? Like, what were you always a coach? Did you start your career that way? Or what were you doing before all this?
Yeah, I spent 20 years working in the corporate world, working for big banks all over the world. And that was really the catalyst. But all of that was pretty unintentional. I mean, it was intent through that on the micro, but not on the macro ever. And it took me that amount of time to start really asking myself questions about what I want. And that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about it, because most people aren't really asking themselves that question.
Right.
Most people are on autopilot, like the fog of life. And that's so easy just to go through. And so that was my background. And I really took a long look at figuring out what was the part of it that I liked. Because by the time I got to the point where I wanted to leave, I was so resistant against it and resentful that I just wanted to get everything away from it. But I realized that anything that's worth doing is going to be a climb. Everything in life's a climb.
Right.
Just make sure that you're up the right ladder against the right wall. And so take the things that there's always something good to find if you're willing to find it. So take those things and start to put your ladder up against that wall. For me, it was the theme of people and helping people.
And, you know, that's a good way to look at it, too, because then you're not so rejecting and resentful of the things that you've learned. Right. So was there something that happened? Were you traveling or something, or was you just tired? Like, what was it that like made you go, OK, I really cannot do this anymore? Like, what was that point for you?
Yeah, there was a point of that. And people talk about finding yourself, finding your calling, finding what that is. And for me, the language of that didn't sit well. I couldn't grasp it. Like, finding what?
Right.
And I switched it to, or I heard it somewhere, or someone told me, and I don't remember when, but the difference was, rather than trying to find, start to create. Because creation, you can go forward and just do whatever it is that you want. It's like, okay, that's different than finding something.
Right.
So it's coming from me rather than something external. And so rather than like a moment where it was just like it was nothing at all, then it was everything. you look back and you can kind of see the breadcrumbs of it, right? And
Mhm.
there's moments bigger than others, and there's things that I look to now, I look back to that feel really big to me now, but in the moment they didn't. And that's what I would really think about. If you're what your listeners or your people that are watching this are thinking about, what do I do, what do I want, and like, stop trying to necessarily look for the big huge things and just look for the little
Yeah,
pieces, the bits and
yeah,
pieces. It's a puzzle to put together, and you just want the little breadcrumbs of it. But I mean, there's a moment where I was working on Wall Street, just kind of wandering around lunchtime or a Tuesday afternoon, just being, oh my goodness, like, what am I doing here?
right.
I don't want to go back upstairs. I want to go home, and like, why am I doing this? And like, that was a moment where it's like, hey, enough. Like, I asked myself a really silly question, Neena. I said, if they paid me twice as much to stay, would I stay? And the answer I got was even sillier than the question, because, silly question, silly answer, was yes, I would stay, but just so I could leave sooner.
Right.
Okay, well,
Right, right.
right.
I get that.
But it came from a stacking effect of all of those breadcrumbs together to get to that point, for
Right,
sure.
right. Yeah, and that's and you're right. I think the key there was that you stopped and paused and asked yourself. Most people don't. You're right. They're in a fog, or they're resentful, or they're angry. And they're just angry at their boss, angry at their coworkers, angry at their career, their job, and you're like, but there was good things too. And and I love the breadcrumb idea too, because I think what's happening, or at least from some of the people that I have been coaching and speaking to, is the same. Like, it's all or nothing. Like, they think that if they have this side thing that they're growing, I want to hear what you think about this, that they feel like they have to leave their job and jump in 100%. So they get nervous about doing anything, because if they do it, they feel like they have to leave everything. It's like this all or nothing thing. So how do you feel about that? Like, somebody working full time but building that side hustle, do they leave their full time and jump into the side hustle? Like, how do you work through that?
It's one of my favorite things to contend with, Neena, because like it's so on the biggest principle here I see of what you shared is, most of the time we think about things as binary, black, white, yes, no,
Yeah.
in or out. But life isn't like that.
Right.
And so but we start to think about it like, now I'm in my job that I don't like, or my business I don't like, whatever it is, and I want to get there. Even if you know what you got, right? If you're in that place, you're miles ahead of most, because at least you've defined something you're going towards. But it can feel really big, because if you're here and you're thinking about the other side of it, like, so I'm physically standing at one side here, like, to get to the other side of it, like, so
Right.
it's a big chasm, like there's a bridge in between. So it's not about being one side of the bridge or one side of the cliff to the other side of the cliff. It's actually, you've only got to go for the journey on the bridge, right? You've only got to take one step at a time. And so I think about it like that, like there's a transition period. And just like, as I'm sure you do, and I work with my clients on their goals, it's the same thing, right? It's oh my goodness, I want to. So far this morning, I worked with someone who works in finance and banking, and they were starting their own brewery. And when we first started working on that, it's like, oh my goodness, I can see myself. I can't even comprehend like what that would be like to own that and to be brewing beer and having those people around and having that community, because I see myself in the identity as what I've done for a long time.
Right.
And so, but we should stop asking ourselves that, because that is too big to contend with. We've got to know where it is. What you've actually got to do is take the next best step, right? To just do the next thing on a plan. And those things stack way quicker than we expect.
That's
Because
right.
what actually happens is we tend to think that we can get that stuff done immediately, but we massively overestimate that. But what we also do is hugely underestimate what we can get done in the longer term.
Yeah.
And that's the power of compound interest.
So good.
Most time we think about compound interest in terms of like your 401k or investments, but really compound interest is energy, actions, activity, and time, right? And so it's just whatever it is, you stack it and you're consistent with it, get great outcomes.
Right, you do. And I love that, and I think people need to keep in mind too that they've never been there before. Like, he's never brewed in a whole place before. Like, I think people think they're supposed to already know that and be there, and like, you've arrived, and they don't realize. I love the compound interest, like going like, and that must have been really good for you as you're coaching and doing this, that you took those things that you've learned in finance, and knowing that you compound and you add until you get to your portfolio however it is you want it. It's the same thing with your career, same thing with your life and everything else. It's like you said, you have children, same thing with your babies, right? It's not like you had your baby and now it's a teenager. It's like an everyday learning, going process, right? So how do you take your clients there? Like, what do you do when a client does not like see it as a place that they can compound go to, like they just want to leave their job today, you know, like they're done and they want to do this brewery, for instance? Is that something like you try to hold on a second and like see where their goals are, or do you encourage it and help them along the way? Like how do you focus on something like that?
Yeah, I love it, love it. Like, let me out. I want to get out today.
Yeah.
I think the start always is meet people where they are, of
Yeah.
course, and so it depends, right? Some people are ready to go. Like some people might say, "Look, I'm ready. I'm out now." And then you're like, "Well, hang on." Like on the face of it, that might sound like, "Hang on, you've got a family to look after. You've got some commitments.
Right.
You can't just do that." And they might say, "Well, look, I just saved 300 grand. I'm ready to go." Right? And so it depends. Is the answer, right? Again, we're back to a continuum rather than like yes or no. What's the right answer?
Right.
It depends, right? And so it is a journey to go and to contend with, right? And so it's back to the start point, which I believe is everything is awareness. You got to start with like knowing where you are, like what's actually real for you, and then that's the place when you can start to say, okay, now I've got some solid ground to stand from, right? And so then it's just looking about what's real and where do I really want to go? Okay, what's it actually going to take, and look at the practicality. It's got to start from a place of commitment.
Yeah.
If someone can convince you that they're committed, this is going to happen no matter what, then it's just a case of putting a plan together and working on it, and knowing that like nothing is linear, and so it's a case of being committed to your outcomes and just flexible in your approach.
Yeah, and they have to like really be committed is a great word, because a lot of times what happens is they hit these walls. At least with some of the clients I've worked with, they'll hit a wall, procrastination comes in.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not looking at the risk versus the reward. Is it worth it? You know, that kind of stuff. And it's very interesting, isn't it? Just helping people kind of, they already have it in them, I think. Like the answer is there. Right. And so what me and you do is go, come on out, you know, come on out, it's coming. And before you know it, it's something they already had in them. They just needed somebody to guide them in that step, Nick. And that's why I think being a coach is probably one of the best things in the world, because you can literally see somebody's transformation like in front of you. Right. That must be very, that must be very rewarding for you, like coming from one career and shifting over into, is that all you do now, just coaching, or are you still doing the banking and the financing and all that as well?
No, I coach 100%. I've done it for years now. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that just jumped out at me when you said that was going back to those days. And that was one of the breadcrumbs, was looking and saying, well, what do I like about what I was doing for 20 years? And what did I end up gravitating to? And it was working with people that were in my team, one-on-ones. What do you want? How can I coach you? I didn't even know what really coaching was, and it as a specific defined approach, but it's like coaching and mentoring, and I do it and people in other teams, and that's what I would do. But it was always wasn't it, like, obviously I didn't know some of the principles, but I was just kind of going on instinct, and I was like good at it, but without really being as a third party. It was being I was working there with them, and so like their part of that was I wanted them to go where the bank wanted them to go rather than where they wanted to go. But so that was a balance we had, and a lot of people I found in that industry, and really in a lot of corporate type roles, are they there because they think they should be there? Again, back to the fog, rather than, or it pays well rather than they actually want to be there. So that commitment part wasn't necessarily there. But as you said, like, I think again, one of the foundations beliefs as a coach is that I believe always that whoever I'm working with, they have got everything that they already need.
Yeah.
And I'm like their biggest cheerleader. I'm more convinced than they're convinced.
Right.
And I'm just a wall of certainty.
Right.
Like whatever they got, it's like, yep, you're gonna do it. Yep, you're gonna do it. Yep, you're gonna do it. Like, doesn't matter how many times you tell me otherwise, we're always coming back to that.
Yeah.
And so like that is, I think it's part of our privilege, Neena, to be able to not be in people's lives intensely, like they're playing all the time in their game of their life. So it's so easy to get into the weeds, get swept away. And like, it's our privilege just to go in once a week and just check in. Like, it's like, oh, this is where you were. Oh, okay, completely forgot that. I often say it's like it's your insurance policy, right? It's like the worst can happen is that you lose 7 days.
Yeah.
And after 7 days, we'll come back and we'll catch it all. Whereas a lot of people, a lot of time in that fog, or like I always think of it. You mentioned the pandemic before as well. I think a lot of the the world was underneath a collective comfort blanket.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
everything's
Hmm.
okay, everything's fine. And so what happened with a little bit was the blanket got pulled out, and people were a bit shocked about that. And so, but I say good, like because
Yeah.
that allows people to start thinking a bit differently. That some patterns got broken,
Yeah.
and that allowed people to step up or not, but at least be more aware of what's there, and that's always valuable.
So how do you take your clients through the process? I believe that you mentioned before that you also work with corporates, right? So you work with individuals and you also work with corporate teams, I'm assuming, right? Is that what you said before? Okay.
Sure, sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you take the approach to this? Like, do you have like a certain pillars that you do? Like, are there certain things that you angle on? How do you do your coaching structure?
Yeah, there's a lot of different answers to that, of course, because there's many ways to go, right? I believe in being 100% scripted, but 100% flexible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
understanding that I think life was always in a cycle, right? And there's some underlying principles, and I think and that's why it's so cool because you can read books and work with other coaches, and it's so much fun, like working with other coaches because they're in the same mindset. So you can just get to the uptime all the time and make a
Right.
lot of progress. So I think the principles are always the same. What you call them and how you refer to them is the only thing that's really different. And so I think of it like a cycle called the AAA process, where it's awareness, action plan, and achievement.
Okay.
Right? And so like and most people start with the action plan, right? Goal setting, goal
Hmm.
setting. People know they need to set goals. Like life doesn't go to plan without one.
Right.
It doesn't tend to, right? But and
Right.
most people aren't very good at that because they haven't practiced it, not because they can't. But they
Right.
go to the goal settings and try to set out a goal. Like New Year's Eve, I'm definitely going to work out 7 days a week for the rest of the year. I'm 100% committed and convicted. And you know what? In that moment, Nina, they are. They
Right.
are, right? And we also know that like that doesn't last forever, right? And so you get a weekend and you've done great, and then something happens, you miss a workout, and because they missed one workout, all bets are off
Right.
because the game they'd set up wasn't a winnable game. So they started at the action plan. The action plan wasn't good, it fell off, didn't work, and then they start to tell themselves, maybe it's me, it doesn't really work for me. And then the
Mhm.
next time it comes up, they don't try as much, and therefore they get less results. So you've got to start with the first A, which is that awareness. You've got to know where you are. You've got to know what's true for you. You've got to know what you really want and how committed are you. Oftentimes, when people will tell themselves they're committed, but they're not actually, because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
decision making itself. People make a decision. Oftentimes, when people would say they made a decision, what all they mean is that they've made a decision to explore, not that they've made the decision like I'm all in.
Right.
And so
Right.
when you're all in, like that's a very different impact than when you just kind of playing around. Like either
Right.
jump all the way in the pool, or don't
Right.
bother putting your toes in. Right, like it's you got that's the way you're going to find out really really true. So you got to know where you are. Once you know where you are, and then you've got to make the plan to what is the milestone for where you're going to go. And then actually create that map. And then the last A is the achievement stage, Nina, because I think that even if people figure out the awareness part and they create the action, the achievement, and I'm doing this because it's a cycle,
Yeah.
right? The achievement at the bottom, that's the part that's so powerful. Back to the compound interest. It's every single week coming and checking in, check in, check in, check in. Like if you measure once a year, you're going to have bad years.
Right. Right.
If you measure once a month, you already have bad months. You can measure once a week, where you can tell the story, right? It's like
Right.
you need to know where you are because like it doesn't go in a linear fashion. Like it will start to go out of whack, but it's checking in. I think that process is always true, and you can call it what you want, but that's the hierarchy of how I think about it. And underneath those three different A's, there's a ton of different processes, strategies, tactics, and it's all underpinned by the fact that 80% of success is mindset anyway.
Right. That is so true. That is so true. So when you do this with individuals, and do you do a different kind of structure with the corporate settings and teams, or is it the same, or how do you work that?
Yeah, it's the same principle overall, and so it depends on the size of the company or the size of the team you're working with,
Mhm.
what their goals are, how the team's structured. But it's basically the same approach. But I wouldn't pretend to go and start to work with clients and say, I got your answer here.
Of course.
I'm going to go in and say, like, well, what do you want to get to?
Right.
Let's figure out an approach. Let's co-create together, right? And here's the
Right.
principles. Let's see how we put the principles together. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the certainty. Is like Nina, it works.
Right.
Coaching works.
Right.
Right? And so it
Right.
all depends on just what that individual or that team wants, and then just applying the right principles at the right time through the strategies and for what that particular place needs. And to know that, like, look, wherever you start, it's not likely where you're going to end out, and you're constantly making adjustments along the way. And I think that's the key, right?
Yeah.
Stay with that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that I love what you said too, that I don't have the answer for you, and I think people need to know that, because sometimes when I'm speaking to a client, I'm bringing them on or whatever, like, that's the one thing we try to get clear off the bat. It's their answer. It's what they discover. But a lot of people think that you really are supposed to give them the answer. Like, you have the answer, right? Like, you're going to give me the answer, right, Nick? Like, what's the answer? And you're like, I don't know what you want, right? Because we're here to guide you. And I think that coaches are super vital right now. They're very important. And there's a lot of different challenges I'm seeing pop up. So I wanted to ask you about that. Like, do you see like a recurring theme or something happening, like, as you're working with all of your clients? Are you seeing something constantly come up that you're like, okay, this is actually a big thing right now in this day and age? Do you see something like that coming up?
Absolutely, plenty of things. The biggest thing, something that we call the tyranny of the urgent. It's people getting stuck in reaction, and I believe, Neena, that it comes from, if we cycle back, and not true for everyone, of course, I'm generalizing, but cycle back to when we're first starting out and wherever we're starting out in, it tends to be that the advice we get given from people that are around us, that guiding us, wherever that might look like, is that work hard, work hard, do, like, work hard. And that is good advice, because at that point it's alternative of, like, be lazy or work hard. It's like, definitely work hard, for sure. If that's the alternative, work hard. And once you start to work hard, whatever that exactly means for you, but it's taking action, getting results. When you start to do that, you start to enjoy it. You start to get momentum, right? It's like you make a commitment, you put something out there, and that looks like people start, because you're making an impact. So people start trying to take more of you.
Right.
And like, hey, Neena, that was good work. Can you do that again? And can you do that on top of that as well?
Right.
And that starts to be really cool, because you're like, oh, cool, I'm worth something. I'm valuable. And so you're like, yeah, whatever you need, right? And the best people do that. Like, the people that don't as much, like, they back off a little bit. But the best people keep doing it. And then because they keep doing it and getting results from it, they do more of it. And then they push more of it. And what happens is they run out of time, because that's the thing that kind of limits us in that factor.
Yeah.
The biggest example I could think about for me in my previous career, I remember working for a bank down in Florida. And I remember at the time I had 4 teams, not many people, like 25 people, but 4 teams. And I didn't have, like, the next layer down wasn't very, very robust. And so I was doing a lot of everything. And my calendar was like, I used to go put myself in a room all day. So I couldn't actually be there with anyone in the teams. I was just on meetings. So 8 till 5, and I'd go back to my desk, and I used to joke myself, oh, now I can start work for the day. So it got a place where I was just like, I'll do more than everyone else. I got it. Right. And that's good advice up to a point. It's just, if you zoom out a little bit more, it needs to be, you've got to be focusing on what's the most important thing. How do I do less of the stuff that's in the way? What's just a high level distraction, and that's a real big shift in thought process. It's actually opposite, because it's like, well, I can't do that. Like, people might see me as lazy. And so you've actually got to say goodbye to that version of you that was really successful up to that point in order to get to that next place. I think that's the thing I see the most for people in business. Really any part, like, even if it's in business, or if you're a senior person in a corporate setting, or another business setting, that's the thing I see the most.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. That's really, really good. And I see a lot of that as well. Another thing that I'm seeing too is comparison. A lot of comparison, like, oh, that person's business is bigger than mine, or they have more followers than me, or they have more engagement, or because a lot of people that I deal with are either coaches themselves, or they work on social media or platforms and stuff like that. And so that is a driving thing for them. And they don't realize that, this person is, I don't know, I guess they're real followers or whatever. They're really big right now. But if you ask that person, they've probably been doing this for years, and they just got to the point, right. So people, I think, have to, kind of like pull the curtain back a little bit and look behind it, So, Nick, what are, like, some of the key takeaways that it, for I have a really great audience, and I have an audience, it's very diverse, mostly women, but it is very diverse.
Mhm.
So if you can give them a key takeaway for them, as far as like when it comes to coaching or their career or anything like that, what would you give them?
Yeah, I'd say first off, by the way, I got to say thank you for that, Nina. It was really cool. The comparison's really important, right? You got to have apples to apples. Like there's
Yeah.
a visual somewhere of like there's this guy out on stage, success, and what you don't see is the 15 years of not success behind
Yeah.
like, all the late nights and like that. That's really really key. But like key takeaways for people that listen to it, like listen to this, watching this, you got to. I should said to you earlier, got to meet people where they are. You got to meet yourself where you are as well.
Yeah, good.
Wherever you have the most resistance in your life, that's where there's the most upside. It's like
Mm,
like there's always plenty of opportunity, and if you feel like that there's not, that's your biggest opportunity. And once you get past that, you're going to be standing in a metaphorical room looking around about all these different tunnels you could go down. Like, well, that one's a nice tunnel. That's easy. That sounds quite good. It's like probably the one that you really don't want to go down is the one that you should go down. Like that's
right.
the hero's journey of discovery and to set, and that's back to the awareness part I talked about, like to really start to know like what's most important for you.
Right.
And if that's too much, make it smaller.
Right.
You might say, what's the most important part of my life?
Right.
You
Right.
could break your life down in many different ways.
Right.
And if that's too much as well, make it even smaller. It's like, what did I want to be when I was a kid? What
Yeah.
are my hopes and dreams? And
So
and
good.
and I would also like offer people if there's any resistance to any of that stuff, to look at something that and it's true for everyone. Look at something that's in your life that you really value and have, and look at a point in your life where you thought that was just a dream, and you'll give yourself evidence that you can do whatever
I
it is
was
that
just
you
gonna
want.
say evidence. That's so good. I was just gonna say evidence. I was gonna say have a little bit more faith in yourself, because there is a lot of evidence around you that you have overcome a lot of things, that you've done things you were afraid of before, and even the career you're probably in now, the one that you're in now, that you were probably terrified the first day that you started to do that career, and now you're sick of it, but you started somewhere, right? So that's evidence to me too. I like looking at evidence. I think it's important for us to do that. So Nick, before I let you go, I do need for my audience to know where to reach you. If they resonate with you and want to work with you, I want to know where they could find you. So drop it. Tell us.
Awesome. Yeah, and look, should always have someone, even if it's not. I believe everyone should have a coach, but if
I
it's not
agree.
a coach for you, someone where they can give you a different perspective, because a jar cannot see its own label, and even if you're super self-aware, you still can't see everything, right? And so
Right.
have someone to do that. And I'm always trying to provide value, and as a coach, I'm sure that's what always you're doing, Nina, and that's what we always need to do. So I've got a bit of a present for your viewers and your listeners.
Yeah.
I've got a toolbox that have just 4 simple ways to boost productivity, to start thinking about things, and we talked about already. To access it, all you got to do is to go to achievers-mindset.com/tools. You can put your name and email in that. You can get the tools, and you'll get
Awesome.
my newsletter also as well.
That's fantastic. And so is that where they would normally find, like, if they wanted to work with you as a coach as well, or?
So you
Yeah.
can find me in a couple of different ways. You can
Okay.
go to proadvisorcoach.com. You can go and find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Nicholas Davies on LinkedIn, or also Coach Nick Davies on Twitter as well.
Okay, great. I'm gonna make sure to link all of your stuff up below anyway. So you are awesome, Nick. This was great. You dropped a lot of great stuff on here. Thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate you. I do.
Appreciate you. Thank you for
Yeah,
making it
thank you.
super easy, and it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to make sure to put Nick's all of his information below. So you're going to go ahead and go get that tool, those tools, sign up for his newsletter. I'll make sure that I put his website on there and everything else so you can follow him. And if you want to work with him, reach out, because he obviously has all of the skill sets and the knowledge to help you get to that next place where you want to get to, right? So I want to thank you guys for being here and spending time with us. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. You know the deal. Until next time.
This broadcast is brought to you by Wincheck Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.